Hey everyone, welcome to the This Week I'm Into podcast. Today we are discussing chess. Later on, we'll have our good mutual friend Ethan Blaser talk about his experience with chess. Today I'm with my friend and co-host Paul Imberguglio. Paul, how you doing?
I'm doing good as always, Hans. How are you?
Me too, Paul. As per usual, I would like to start off. What is your experience with chess?
I had started being introduced in chess in elementary school. An after-school chess club existed, and my parents had signed me up for it. So I learned how to play chess pretty early on. I don't think I've touched a chessboard since probably the fourth grade. So other than enjoying the Queen's Gambit, which I'm sure we'll touch on at some point, that's about it.
Okay, well, in order to be one of the best chess players in the world, you do have to start early. So at least you got that going for you.
Yeah, thank God my parents had the foresight.
They knew grandmaster Imberguglio was in your future. It's too bad other things like baseball took over, huh?
As a completely unrelated point, I've always wanted to be famous because I feel like my last name is a little bit hard to pronounce, and I just think it would be funny watching people try to say it in a larger capacity than in like my small social circle.
That's an interesting motive to be famous.
Yeah.
It was to hear your last name mispronounced.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just think it'd be hilarious.
I would say this is one of the topics, this is one of the reasons why this podcast exists. For
really
bouncing around from hobby to hobby. Chess, I probably got into it last January, and it was one of the things I deep dived, absolutely loved for about a month. I still play every now and again, but we'll get into it, but I'm pretty garbage here. So I play I play on something called chess.com, which a lot of people are probably familiar with. My current ELO rating is 358, which just for context is absolutely horrible.
Wow, 358.
Yeah, 358. This is for blitz chess, which is 10 minutes or less. I will say that there wasn't a great resource for this because I found some varying numbers, but it did look like the average rating was 913. So that's context for you. I'm at 358. I am horrible at chess. I didn't have the luxury of being introduced in fourth grade, so I'm playing some catch up here.
God, I wonder what I would be at if I played enough.
It's like riding a bicycle.
Like if I literally went, I know, should I just go like play like 10 games and see what the ELO is?
You absolutely should, and it's fun.
I'll do that before we have Ethan on,
yeah.
And just to see what I get.
That's perfect, yeah. I did. The reason I got into it was just the algorithm got me on my YouTube shorts. Started getting recommended chess content, specifically from this channel called Gotham Chess, which seems to be the most popular.
Yes, I know.
Okay.
One.
Seems to be the most popular chess content creator on YouTube. His videos start showing up, and I'm like, oh, like this is kind of fun to watch. And then it started playing a little bit. I mean, obviously I'm not good, but it's still fun to play. And also, chess.com matches you against similar ratings, so I'm also playing people who are not good, so it's competitive.
Yeah, no, that is good. That's so funny that you say Gotham Chess, because I feel like the reason I was talking about the Queen Gambit earlier is after that came out, obviously I think a lot of people were like vaguely interested in chess at that point. And so I think that helped introduce chess into my TikTok algorithm. And that guy, I swear, would be like every third video for me for a long time. 100%. I think I've slowly weaned myself off of the chess like rabbit hole. Okay. But I agree. I did like watching it. I think I also was in it around the time that dude, I think his name is like Hans Niemann or something, was like, there was a scandal about him and chess.com and
cheating
the butt plug
scandal. Yeah.
So I think that there was a little bit of like news that followed it. So
I will say that's all alleged, but it is fun
I took
to
it
hear
as
that
fact.
Story. Yeah.
I'm in it for the drama. You know, it's always great when you go into something that you know nothing about and the first thing you're introduced is like really obscure but crazy drama.
Yep.
And you don't know if it has any backing, but you're like, yeah, like he definitely used that.
100%. For context, for what we're talking about here, if no one's heard of this before, there is a famous chess player currently named Hans Niemann.
Different than our Hans.
Different than me, Hans. I swear this isn't me. But yeah, he was, I don't want to butcher this, so I'll try to give it just what I know. But I think he was at a chess tournament playing one of the best in the world, Magnus Carlsen. And I think Magnus Carlsen retired from the match because he thought that Hans Niemann was cheating. Because he was playing like the top engine move, like basically what the most smart chess computer would say what you should play. Magnus accused him of of cheating, and the modality of how he was cheating theoretically was this is pure alleged. Don't endorse this, but he was wearing a butt plug and it vibrated and told him the best move to make. This is all alleged. This is pure podcast right here. This is what we're in it for. But
yeah, this is the deets that I needed to figure out.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. So that's funny. And I think, so you're talking about Hans Niemann, you talk about Queen's Gambit. That was definitely a moment for chess. And I think that definitely got it into the kind of cultural zeitgeist of, it was in a lot of people's algorithms, and it started becoming more popularized, more to the masses, I would say.
Yeah, no, that's definitely what probably brought it back into my life.
I would say that's true for, like, there's a lot of different pieces of media that have really popularized something. I think the other one I'm thinking of is Stranger Things and D&D. Like, that also brought D&D to the forefront of, you know, culture at that moment. And I think the Queen's Gambit did the same thing for chess, so probably garnered a lot more attention in the moment. And not to say chess was not popular, because it is the world's most popular board game. So it wasn't not popular, but I think it just appealed to the masses even more so when you added the drama of the Queen's Gambit.
For sure. I always think of chess being like a really intellectual thing that you have to like study at to be like really good at, as opposed to things like, I mean, obviously this is stupid, but like Monopoly or like Clue,
yes,
or like Catan, where it's just like, you know, you and your buddies just like pick it up and, you know, you screw around for an hour.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure there is a competitive Monopoly scene too.
There is, actually. There totally is. And I could send you a YouTube link. Maybe I'll link it on the podcast that I actually really like.
Okay, great. So maybe Monopoly episode coming up. Who knows? But yeah.
Competitive Monopoly is honestly really interesting.
But let's just talk about, if someone was completely uninitiated, how would you explain chess as a game to someone?
Oh Lord, how would I describe chess?
Hard-hitting questions.
That might be one of the hardest things to describe, because there's so many pieces that do separate things. But yeah, I don't know. I would say, like, on a basic level, you know, you have different cast of pieces that can, you know, have different abilities, and you're trying to capture the king, which is
right.
Like, you know, your most important thing.
Ultimate objective: if you capture the opponent's king, that is how you win a game of chess.
Yeah, I do kind of expect that most people at least have a basic understanding of chess, but maybe I'm totally unfounded.
Yeah, I think so. That might have been redundant or reduced, probably both, but just a general idea. And I would also say just something that makes chess incredibly interesting. Part of the reason it's so popular is because it's not a solved game. In other words, there's no optimal way to play chess. Like in tic-tac-toe or checkers, like, it's solved. There's a best way to play always. In chess, that there's definitely strategies and tactics that you can use, but there's no, if I do this, I win.
Yeah, and I think what we might have brought up earlier was there are AI or like computers that will recommend like best play, but it's not using like a database of known moves.
Right, exactly. So that's been definitely in the strategy of chess, is like, if you watch a professional chess player play a game, there's like defined openings, but then past like 5 moves or so, and I'm just kind of thinking about that. That's not defined by anything. That's when there's no longer a strategy to the opening. You've done the opening, and now it's all about tactics and strategy after that.
Yeah, you're saying like the game's like completely unique. Like nobody's played that set of moves after, you know, a couple of them.
Yeah, I don't know the exact number, but yeah, exactly. So in that case,
it's probably not that many.
Yeah.
I mean, just like compounding exponentials, like you probably become unique pretty quick.
I'm so glad you say that, Paul, because that's one of my fun facts.
Oh my gosh, am I getting an early Hans fun fact here?
Early fun fact. There's more possible chess positions than there are electrons in the universe. About 10 to the 120th.
That's absurd.
Yeah. Which is just to say, bringing it back, is you can't memorize how to win chess. There's infinite possibilities, basically, so...
Okay, well, here's the thing. When I was in elementary school and I had started playing chess for the first time, I was in the lowest of low groups, right? I was probably in the Hans Elo of third grade chess.
You say affectionately, right?
I say affectionately because it was just really the cream of the crop in that group.
The cream of the crap, okay.
No, I was more like getting creamed like I was corn. I don't know if I ever won a game, but I do remember that the peak strategy at that age was, and I don't know if there's a name for it, but there's like this 4-move bullshit way to win where, do you know what I'm talking about? I swear it's like a classic.
Oh,
like,
yes.
It's like a checkmate in like 3 moves.
Yep.
And it was like, but it's like a trick. Like you'd have to do like the dumbest things to fall for it. And I'm sure it's like the first thing that like everybody learns or like gets like tricked on when you're like learning chess.
Yep.
And it was like so key because like someone would show you and then I would use it to beat someone else. And like it would just pass around like the little classroom.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, and it's an absolutely humbling thing to be a part of when someone is like, oh, we should play chess, and then 3 moves in, they're like, gotcha.
Yeah, it's like, all right, well, fuck this game.
I'm out. That's why you stopped playing after 4th grade, huh?
Yeah, well, you get beat by that 3 or 4 times, and you're like, maybe this game is not for me.
Yes, I hear that.
Like I said, it seems intellectual. I don't know if that's necessarily my skill set.
I'm sure there's probably an intellectual component to chess, but there's also pattern recognition. I'm sure if you start early, it's the best way to get good at chess.
I was hoping you were going to say passion, but go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, unfortunately for us, it is impossible for us to become grandmasters at chess. You have to start from a young age to get to that level. Something about, neuronal connections. Like, if you start at the age of 25 like we are, then you're not going to make it to the upper echelon of the chess world, unfortunately for us. So, have to plan another career.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just going to say that was a pretty big hit on my ego.
Oh, no. Well, Paul, I have a little bit about the history of chess if you want to hear about that.
Yeah, hit me with your history fact.
Okay. Chess was born from an Indian game called Chaturanga in 600 AD. Apparently, the story goes is that a Indian prince made this game in memorial of his brother who fell in war. And so when you think about chess, it's definitely a war-oriented game. Like you have your soldiers and the whole goal is to, capture the kingdom, get the other team's king.
Yeah.
It did evolve. It spread from India, evolved all throughout Asia and Europe. It kind of cemented into what we know as chess today in the 16th century, and it has become massively popular since then. I think it was like 625 million players worldwide today.
Holy crap. What is that? Like a 10th of the world?
Yeah, like that's an insane amount of players. So this might be very possibly the most popular topic we've covered, or maybe ever will cover. On this podcast. You touched on the intellectual component of chess, and that is very much also wrapped in history. It was viewed as a very intellectual game, so much so that it was a huge component of the Cold War. In the Cold War, like USA versus USSR, like we're not actually fighting, so what do we actually compete on? Chess. Chess is a way to demonstrate your intellectual dominance.
Some people thought it was the space race, but it's actually just chess.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure, there's other examples too, but yeah, chess.
But this is the peak one.
Yeah, this is the one to pay attention on, not the space race. So there was 2 kind of main players in that scene. There was Bobby Fischer, which is probably a fairly well-known name from the USA, versus another player, Spassky, who is a dominant chess master in the USSR, who played many tournaments and exhibition games against each other as a way to try to prove their intellectual dominance in this game. Following that, there was also a Russian master of chess who was a fairly common household name now. That's Garry Kasparov, he's a Russian player, and he was absolutely dominant in his time, beat many of the US chess players. The US eventually beat Kasparov in the game of chess, but not with another player, but rather through a supercomputer built by IBM and US scientists named Deep Blue.
Yeah, I feel bad for the Russians now because it seems like the US were the first people to do doping.
Yeah. That was intellectual doping at the time. Exactly right. This is such a brief history of chess. There's so much more to get into, but just wanted to touch on those subjects. Today, we have the world reigning champion is Magnus Carlsen, a Norwegian chess grandmaster and YouTube streamer. He's a 5-time world champion and 5-time world rapid champion, and he's a 7-time blitz champion, which check me on this, but I think that's 3 minutes or less for the games.
One thing that I found so interesting about Magnus Carlsen and all the other premier players of chess is that they're all, at this kind of like minor celebrity status, and they're also just really chill people. You were saying that he's like a YouTube streamer. I've definitely seen clips of him doing like drunk streams against like the other grandmasters, and they're kind of just screwing around with each other. So it's kind of funny that these people who are playing like one of the most like intellectual games are also just like incredibly hilarious. And
yeah, I think calling them, minor celebrities is absolutely true. I think some of them may even be major celebrities, considering how popular chess is and how many views they get when they're saying, "Oh, I'll just like take 7 shots and then see how well this game goes." And many people will watch that.
Okay, so just to pivot real quick, I wanted to talk about ELO, which is a really common like rating scheme, even outside of chess. So mostly when I see it, people talk about it like in video games, right? It's kind of like it's like a representation of your skill level. But as I was learning about chess, I realized that it was literally created for chess by a chess player named Arpad Elo. So, great that you get that named after you.
Wow, he got the system named after himself, huh?
Yeah. And in and of itself, like I didn't realize how it was calculated. And just to like touch on it really quickly, because we were talking earlier about Hans's ELO being like 380 whatever, right? But like what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that it was some raw score, right? Like if you were 382, that meant some sort of like mathematical thing, and I guess it does. But instead of it being a raw score, it's more of a probability kind of calculation between you versus someone else's ELO score. So the stat that I saw was, let's just round you up to 400, right?
Okay.
If you were 400 and you played someone who was 300, so you're 100 points ahead of them, you're supposed to win about 5/8 of the time, which is like 64%. And if you're 200 ahead of someone, so if you're like 500 playing someone who's 300, you should win 3/4 of your games. So instead of it just being like you win, an extra 2 times out of whatever, for 5/300, it's actually like you win like some higher probability of games if you played like an infinite amount of matches against that person.
Okay.
So I thought that was really interesting. So then I was looking up Magnus Carlsen, and the highest he ever peaked, I think, the number was 2,882 in like classical, because I guess you have different ELOs depending on, you were saying classical,
yep,
rapid, blitz, all these different kinds. But I want to see what probability Hans would have, how many games you'd have to play statistically to win one game.
Like me personally at the roughly 400 ELO.
Because I was just so shocked that it's probably like 99 point, like many nines.
Yeah, I'm absolutely certain it is.
And then I think that's how they kind of like clear, you have all these terms like grandmaster, master, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know them all, but vaguely I think it's like an approximate. Maybe there's some other factors that gets you called something, but the stat that I saw was basically like anyone over 2,000 is a master, anyone over like 2,500 is a grandmaster, and then there's a bunch of stuff like lower and higher of different classes and names, but generally that was the scale that I saw. So you're pretty close, Hans. Honestly, you're only like a couple thousand away, but it's close. I know you said it wasn't possible, but it's not that far.
If I'm at 350 right now, I just got to double that and then double that and then
maybe double it one more time.
Yeah.
But it's not impossible, but it might be.
It is also so interesting how widely applicable ELO is now, considering it came from chess. The other interesting thing about ELO is I've heard it's used in dating apps, such as Tinder. If you're getting right swipe, then your ELO is going up and you get matched with other people with elevated ELOs. So at least I can't dive into it. I don't know much about it, but I have heard it's more applicable than just chess, video games. It's also maybe dominating your dating life.
Damn you, Arpad Elo.
All right, Paul, can I hit you with some fun facts?
God, this is my favorite part.
You like the fun fact segment?
Yeah, I do think so.
Okay, Paul, the word checkmate, which is what you say when you claim the other team's king, comes from Arabic-based language Shah Mat, which means the king is dead. Another fun fact for you, in Armenia, chess is a school subject. So it's not just you getting placed in 4th grade by your parents. Everyone has to do chess.
Do you know if there's a higher amount of chess players from specific regions?
Oh, that's a great question. And I bet there is if it's taught in school and you're starting young, learning how to play chess from a young age, then I bet there is specific regions where the best chess players come from.
Yeah, and I wonder if there's some sort of like intellectual advantage of being good at chess. Like there's something that helps with pattern recognition or something like that. Because you know how they always talk about people who grow up speaking multiple languages, like their brain like works in like different ways. I
Yeah.
wonder if there's like a similar aspect to chess.
I think there definitely is, and there's also research that has showed that improving your game at chess does improve your memory function. So there is actual changes happening in your brain by learning and playing chess, especially from a young age. The longest game of chess was in 1984. It took 20 hours and was 269 moves.
Those poor guys. I don't know how your brain would be functioning at that point. I think from the Queen's Gambit I learned all you need is like hallucinogenic drugs and then it's not that bad.
Oh, is that what gets you through? Is that what makes you good at chess?
All right, we're just spitting thoughts at this point.
All right, Paul. That concludes my fun facts for chess.
Great. All right, well that concludes our discussion. Let's bring on Ethan Blaser. Welcome back to the This Week I'm Into podcast. We're here with our special guest for this week's episode on chess, Ethan Blaser. Welcome, Ethan, to the podcast.
Thank you guys for having me.
Cool. Ethan, before we begin this podcast episode, do you want to tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I guess currently I'm a PhD student in computer science at the University of Virginia. But I actually also went to UVA or University of Virginia with Hans and Paul together during undergrad. So I actually know these guys. We were in the same fraternity and that's how I got to know these guys. But I would say chess is one of my favorite hobbies. I just do it for fun on the side. I'm not like a competitive chess player or anything, but it's something that I do just to pass the time in between working.
Ethan, when did you start playing chess? Is this something that you picked up recently, or have you been playing since you were little and you just got back into it?
Yeah, it's kind of a classic story, I would say. I started playing chess when I was pretty young. I think I was probably 4 or 5. With my dad taught me how to play chess. We had this little Star Wars themed chessboard. We had the white pieces were the allies and then the Jedi, and then the dark pieces were the Sith. So I had a lot of fun doing that when I was a little kid. Then I was part of the middle school chess club a little bit in middle school, and then kind of as high school came along and got busier, I played a little bit less and less, and didn't do too much playing during most of undergrad until the pandemic came around, and then of course chess kind of came back into popularity with the Queen's Gambit, and I found myself having a lot of free time on my hands, and so I decided to get back into it, kind of being inspired by the show, and that's sort of how I got to the point where I am now, which is taking chess more seriously, but not extremely seriously.
Can you talk about a little bit what you do for chess currently, or is it mostly online stuff, or do you meet up, kind of chess club, any local tournaments or anything like that?
Yeah, so I actually am a member of the Charlottesville Chess Club. So I go every week. That we meet on Mondays and Wednesdays. I usually try to I realistically only go once a week, usually on Wednesdays. But that's mostly that's separate from the UVA Chess Club, where it's mostly students. But the Charlottesville Chess Club has a lot of just members of the town, people who work here, or graduate students or medical students, for example, who just want to get together and have some fun and play some chess. It's not usually super rated. Sometimes we'll have cash tournaments where you buy in for $10 and the winner at the end of the day, wins whatever that prize pot is. So I guess that's as close to competitive as I get. And sometimes we have rated tournaments, but I usually don't participate in those too much. But of course, as you mentioned, Hans, one of probably the most common way that I play is just online, just on chess.com or on Lichess, depending on whether my friends are on, which website my friends are on. I just play online during lunch breaks, or I get home from work, or I'm lying in bed before I go to sleep. That's the vast majority of my playing.
You mentioned just the rated tournaments. For someone who doesn't know what that means, like what does it mean to get a rating at a tournament?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So there's a couple different important rating systems I think that exist in the world of chess, and the rating system is in essence, a mathematical way to rate yourself against other chess players. So the most famous rating system kind of that's used globally is the FIDE rating system, and it's a similar math. They all sort of share the same mathematical formula, but the player pools are a little bit different. And basically, you're kind of given a score. So, for example, Magnus Carlsen is rated about 2,800, so 2,800. The best chess computers that exist in the world are rated about 3,500 approximately. And, the average player like myself in this FIDE rating system would be rated something like presumably 1,100 or 1,200, so way down the pecking order. But so FIDE is sort of the governing body of chess overall, but sort of below that is the U.S. Chess Federation, and so there's official U.S. Chess Federation rankings, which tend to be a little bit higher, but are similar. And then, of course, the most common one is the ELO rating system, which is used on chess.com. So you can see on chess.com, you have your chess.com rating, which my chess.com rating, I think rapid is about 1,700. So I'd say, an intermediate player,
That's really, really good, man.
Before we move on, something that Hans and I were talking about earlier was our ELO's rating, and maybe it's higher on this the FIDE system. But Hans, what was yours again?
Yeah, Ethan, do you wanna guess what my ELO is on chess.com?
And actually, Hans, before he guesses, Ethan, I also need you to guess mine, because like I said, I did go and play 5, whatever like the 10-minute games are.
Yeah, rapid.
On chess.com
Yeah.
to get rated. And so you can also guess mine.
Okay. So if I remember correctly, I think the mean on chess.com rapid is about 700 or 800. So let's assume that the average player on the website is rated 800, and it's an exponential decay. It's like sort of a bell type curve. I would say your rating, I would say Hans is probably about 600, and Paul, I'm going to say it's like 400.
That is so kind of you, Ethan. So me and Paul were talking about this before, and I've played casually a little bit, but I'm at like 350. Like, it's horrible. So
Oh no.
my first 5 games, I won 1, I lost twice, and I quit twice because I just did things that were so stupid that I was too mad at myself to continue. I got 292.
Oh my god.
The amount of times I just gave my queen away because I wasn't paying attention just
Yeah.
made me so mad.
This is so funny. I have had the experience of like maybe twice where I've played Ethan, like we were just sitting next to each other and I played him on my phone. It just multiple times just absolutely blundered every piece. And then Ethan's like, well, like, here's like a tactic that like you kind of messed up on and I claimed your piece like this, but like we can go back and like undo that and then let's just play from here. That probably happened multiple times and Ethan still like absolutely destroyed me. So
Yeah,
I'm just
blunder
giving
on the next
context.
move.
Yeah, exactly. Given context here for Ethan's level versus mine, who's been like an on and off player who like kind of sucks at chess. So
Hans, at least in the rating system, you and I could have a competitive game.
yeah, that'd be great. We should play. Let's make an addendum and we can play.
Okay.
Or maybe like you guys should play a game and I'll just like commentate it. Just
That'd
like,
be
That's
great,
funny. We'll do that at
actually.
the end. We'll
Yeah.
do that at the end. If
Okay.
you're listening at this point, you can cut the podcast off after the ad read.
That sounds like fun, actually. I mean,
Okay.
what do I know? I mean, the rating system is such that, like, I mean, Magnus is closer to the world's greatest supercomputer than I am to him, and the fall off is pretty precipitous. And I think the thing that I'm running into is like you can make. I think, in my opinion, I felt like I could make a lot of progress getting from, I would say 600 or 700 on chess.com to about 12 or 1300 or even 1400 just by sort of playing regularly. But in order to really get above, I would say 1700 or 1800, I'd say above 1800, you have to actually train properly, I think, and have to actually study.
Well, I was just, could you talk a little bit about that, like training and studying, like what that looks like?
Yeah, yeah. So full disclosure, you might laugh at me here. I actually, do you know David Simon, mutual friend of ours? So he's actually a really, really strong chess player. I think he's actually I think he, if I'm not mistaken, I think he's actually a national master. So there's titles in chess, so that the best players in the world are grandmasters, then there's international masters, and then there's national masters. So David is a very, very strong chess player. And we were good friends, and so I would pay him, $10 or $15 for an hour, and he would give me a he'd give me a friends and family rate discount chess lesson. And so in order to so the kind of things that we would do would include solving puzzles, solving tactics. So he would set up a position on the board and say, the theme of this lesson is, positional, like some sort of positional theme, and try to find the best move in the position. And you can't move the pieces, so you have to visualize in your head what's going on. You'd have to visualize, okay, if I play this, and then it's my opposition's turn. You kind of have to calculate different moves in advance and try to explain why this move is strong for you based on all of the different responses that your opponent could have. And then he would give you feedback on why that was bad. And actually, chess.com itself has a lot of these resources through their lessons and puzzles website, where you can go do Puzzle Rush and train your tactical intuition, meaning understanding different themes. It's really just pattern recognition, right? You're trying to train yourself to recognize patterns in the game. So if you have a piece that's only being defended by one other piece, it's maybe hard to explain just with words, but you could capture the piece that's defending that other piece, right? And then take that piece, right? Like there's things like that too, or certain mating patterns, certain checkmate sequences that you need to learn to recognize. So I think that's really one set of training, which is just tactical intuition and puzzles. I think another way to possibly train is openings. Are an important part of chess. I think there's a lot of debate in the chess community about whether people should study openings at the beginner and intermediate level. David is somebody who thinks that you should study openings, study opening principles, and so that unfortunately involves quite a bit of memorization depending on the opening you play. So, for example, we have these really, really strong computers, and the computers can sort of tell you, at least for the first several moves of the game, that you can memorize, because it gets complicated very quickly, the game of chess. But at the very beginning, the opening phase of the game, the first several moves, like this, according to the computer, is the best move in the position. And so we should do that. And if you memorize those moves, that can improve your playing quite a bit. Those are sort of I would say those are the two big ways to train more formally. And there's three phases of a chess game. There's the opening, there's the middle game, and there's the end game. And each of those phases of the game have their own themes and ideas and concepts, and you need to study, kind of just practicing those in each of those three. And I either do that with the lesson, which I haven't done in a while, or at the chess club. Actually, we will do a lot of puzzles and lessons like that. So, and also, the last thing I do, which is a little bit nerdy, I'll admit, is I actually watch a lot of chess YouTube before I go to sleep. It's like kind of the thing I do to put myself to sleep really quickly. I watch. There's a lot of great chess YouTubers out there, as Hans, as you know. It's it's a little bit embarrassing that right before I go to bed, I'll just flip on. I watch this guy, grandmaster Daniel Naroditsky. He's probably my favorite chess content creator. But there's lots of people out there. There's Gotham Chess, which I know, Hans, you're a fan of. I'm not too big a fan of his. He's a little clickbaity for me, but it's to each their own, which is kind of hilarious. And then actually, Gotham Chess was actually David's former coach at one point. So
Wow.
technically, I guess I'm the grand disciple of Gotham Chess in some weird way. But I generally don't like his content. And of course, the scraping the bottom of the barrel is the Botez sisters, where they're just like barely doing chess.
You're telling me you don't like chess boxing?
I can't say I follow it too closely. No, I mean, maybe it's fun a little bit here and there. Like the chess lore, they do a good job covering chess lore, like the Hans Niemann cheating scandal and the and interviewing funny players and like interviewing Magnus. And Gotham Chess has a lot of great interviews, but in terms of like his actual YouTube videos, it's a lot of like opening traps and tricks and things, which are fun for sure. Like it's definitely entertaining, and he does a lot of great recap videos as well. But like for actually trying to improve your playing, at least for me, obviously, Levy Gotham Chess is just a much stronger player than me. I still feel like the way that Naroditsky approaches the content to me is just the most. It's the way I feel like I learn the most. So that's what I listen to mostly.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think Gotham Chess, well, especially the Botez sisters, are entertainers, which is great for new people like me because it got me
Totally.
into chess. But
Oh, totally.
once you get into a higher level, like Ethan is at, then you might want some more focused content.
Yeah, I think just first of all, I'm not trying to dish on Gotham Chess or the Botez sisters. I think they do a really important job in you know bringing chess to regular folks. I think the two of them, as well as the Queen's Gambit, have really brought chess back into the public eye and made it popular. And so, I mean, Gotham Chess's YouTube account I think has like almost 5 million subscribers now. I mean, it's so popular. I think it's great to get people involved in the game. And don't get me wrong, I can still learn tons from Gotham Chess. Like he's a far better player than me. Like he would destroy me. But it's just a question of like how you want the content delivered. Like if you look at his YouTube clips, it's like a lot of like crazy sacrifice games, which is super fun to watch, right? They're super fun to look at and study, but like let's be honest, most games you don't win because you sacrificed a bunch of pieces and then ended up having some genius calculation. Like as you and I probably know very well, like when you try to sacrifice a piece, what ends up happening usually is you just like lose a piece and then somehow your opponent finds something that you didn't think of, and now you're out of a piece and you're screwed.
Ethan, if we could back up a bit to an earlier part of Hans's question, can you talk a little bit about the different tournaments like you've been a part of or that exist?
Yeah, so let's see. I'm actually not a super regular tournament player. I'm sort of at, I would say, one level below like a frequent tournament player. But there are several. Of course, there's the big tournaments, meaning like the world championship level tournaments that Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura and all the other famous chess players will play in. That's sort of part of the World Chess Tour or part of the World Championship qualification. So that's at the very, very top. That's like the World Championship match and the candidates. So there's sort of the top level there. And then I would say kind of below that, there's lots of more local tournaments. There's, the US chess has a US Open where it's the US National Championship where the best US chess players will compete for the championship of being the best player in the country. And those are still all grandmaster tournaments. But kind of as you work your way down to the lower and lower levels, the tournaments become more and more local, of course. So the Charlottesville Chess Club will host rated tournaments, actually, that are not rated by FIDE, meaning that the very large governing body. But if you play in those tournaments, you will contribute toward your USCF, so the US Chess Federation ranking. And so I've played in one of those, but I haven't played enough games to get myself a proper rating, USCF. So I actually couldn't tell you what my USCF rating is, but it's usually about 200 to 300 points lower than your chess.com rating. It's usually what people say. So I'm probably, 1200 or something. Yeah.
What's the structure of that tournament look like? Like, is it round robin? Like, it's overboard, I assume, right? And do you just play a lot of players, or is it bracket style?
That's a great question. Yeah. So there's a couple different tournament formats that exist. I think for the ones that are very local, usually it's some type of what's called a Swiss. So yeah. So there are tournaments that exist. I'll just talk about the tournaments at the highest level because the analogy is the same. Kind of working down the levels. There's different styles of tournaments. So, for example, the Candidates Tournament, which is probably the most famous chess tournament in the world, where the winner of this tournament gets to play the world champion for the current world champion to battle for the world championship match. I think there's 8 players in the candidates, and basically it's round robin. So you play everybody once with the white pieces, once with the black pieces. You get 1 point for a win, half a point for a draw, 0 points for a loss. And after the tournament ends, you just rank everybody based on their results, how many points they scored, and the winner goes on. The winner goes on to play the champion. So that's sort of a Swiss style tournament, I would say, where it's like round robin play. There's also the Chess World Cup. So the Chess World Cup is like it sounds, basically a single elimination or sometimes double elimination, depending on the tournament. The World Cup is single elimination tournament where basically you're seeded based on your rating, and then you win, you move on, you win, you move on, you win, you move on. You play once with white, you play once with black, because you have to play with both sides, right? Otherwise it's unfair because white has a slight advantage generally in chess. So you play once with the white pieces, once with the black pieces, and if you draw, you play something called Armageddon, which is like a sudden death type situation, which is kind of fun. The tournaments I've only ever played in are usually at the local level. They're more likely to be round robin style because you don't have the time, and scheduling is so much more complicated with people when you have a single elimination type bracket. It's just harder to organize.
Probably also nice to be able to confirm you're going to get a certain amount of games with round robin.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like you don't want to pay $10 to enter a tournament and then just like lose on your first game and then you're out of the game. While somebody else who has to play like 10 games or 6 games or whatever, it's just usually the round robin style is more fun. I mean, we're there just to have fun mostly. No one's trying to. I'm not trying to. When I play these tournaments, I'm not trying to make it, as a chess player, which is an extremely hard thing to do. So,
do all these tournaments have a certain game style? I don't know if you mentioned it, Ethan, but Hans had told me earlier there's a couple different versions of chess that you can play, like the fast, rapid chess, or I think there's even shorter than 10 minutes version.
Yeah, so I'd say there's four really. Basically, the flavors of chess that you'll see of classical chess, where like the regular chess that everybody knows is just the categories are broken up by how much time you have, and so classical chess has changed. The time control has changed, but usually it's a couple hours. You have a couple hours to make your move, and every time you make a move, you get like 30 seconds of increment, for example. So every time you make a move, you hit the clock, you get 30 seconds added to your clock. So this is a very long, slow game, right? And this is where the best players in the world will go really, really deep, think so far in advance, right? But then so classical is the slowest. Then there's rapid, which is a totally different style of chess, where basically now you have 10 minutes, for example, or 15 minutes, and you have 10-second increment or 5-second increment. So around the 10 to 15 minutes for each person to make all their moves in a game. And then you get down even lower to blitz, where you have 5 minutes and 3-second increment. And then bullet is like 1 or 2 minutes with either no increment or 1-second increment, just instant moving. And so I think different people excel at different types of chess. And I think the mentality that you have to play different styles of chess well varies across the position. Varies across the different time controls. So in my opinion, what makes Magnus Carlsen, for example, the greatest chess player in the world, is that he's the best chess player in all of those time controls, right? He's the best blitz player. He wins the World Blitz Championship. He's the best rapid player. He wins the World Rapid Championship really often. He's also the reigning until last year, because he didn't want to defend his title. He stepped down. He's also the best classical championship player in the world, chess championship player in the world. So it takes very different types of thinking to play each of those three. And I'm certainly myself much better at the slower chess than the faster chess, for various reasons. But different people will be different. And that's kind of what makes it fun. It's like sometimes people who have a really good intuition are really, really fast, or have quick hands and can calculate really, really quickly, will destroy somebody else in a fast time control, while somebody who is very deliberate, can think maybe deeper, understand positions better, but don't move as quickly or can't think as quickly, will lose. So it's like, it's in a way kind of a totally different game, actually, among those 3 or 4 different varieties of chess.
Ethan, can you explain, if I imagine I'm a complete newbie to chess, you probably don't have to imagine that hard.
Yeah, I don't.
So I'm just beginning chess, and my goal is to become the classical chess world champion. What are the steps to get there?
The steps. Well, the main step is hope that your parents trained you like crazy when you were like 4 years old.
Yeah.
Is the unfortunate sad truth. Hope.
Hans already ruined that for me earlier. I just don't understand why nobody thinks that I could start studying now.
It's not that you couldn't start studying now. I mean, you could, but every single grandmaster basically was trained heavily when you're young. And think about it this way, right? Chess, in a way, relies a lot on intuition, a lot more than people think. Actually, it's a very like in order because the search space, like the amount of moves you have to evaluate, is so large that in order to be good, you have to be able to very quickly narrow down which candidate moves are good. And so it's a lot of intuition and building patterns and repetition. And your brain is really best suited to learn how to do that when you're young, right? Think about how easy it is for a 4-year-old to learn a language, right? A 4-year-old could get dropped in a country or in a new household and learn the language spoken there very, very quickly, much, much quicker than somebody who's 16, right? And it's no different for chess, in my opinion. There's a critical period for learning those types of pattern recognition skills early, and it's when you're young. And so that's why I think it's true that you can't just start playing chess when you're 15 and expect to become the world chess champion. Now, I think that's sort of the sad truth. But if you want to know the logistics behind it, yeah, you have to basically start playing in a bunch of tournaments and building up your rating. So your U.S. chess rating in local tournaments will get better and stronger. Then you'll eventually earn titles like national master, and then playing in more sophisticated tournaments where there are international masters, international tournaments, open tournaments. And then eventually you have to get these what are called grandmaster norms. So you have to, I think, perform well enough in a very prestigious tournament. I have to do that 3 times, and I think you'll eventually earn the title of grandmaster. And then once you're a grandmaster, you play in a bunch of tournaments, qualify for the candidates. You have to win the candidates, then you have to beat the world chess champion. So it's quite a process. But I think the realistic fact of the matter is that even though the mechanism exists for people to reach that level, right? There's nothing like stopping you from doing it from a purely logistical standpoint. From a practical standpoint, like there really is, I believe, a critical period for learning how to play chess, and that's when you're really, really young. So it's been the case for a long time. I think it will continue to be that way.
Ethan, I want to pivot a little bit to the chess computer side of it. And you were talking earlier about how chess computers, like, I'll just call it like a theoretical ranking, was somewhere around like 3,500 compared to the best person who is like 2,800 for Magnus Carlsen. Do you want to talk a little bit about how those work?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. Yeah. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, sort of my regular job, my current position is that I'm a PhD student in computer science. And actually, a lot of my sort of research has been applied in computer games, in games, actually, in general. So a lot of I mostly work on theory and algorithms, an area called reinforcement learning. And that area of research has been applied successfully many times to basically produce some of the strongest, both chess, but also Go and video game computer programs in existence. And so I know at least a little bit about sort of how these chess computers work. We can definitely prune this conversation in the direction you guys find it most interesting. But there's really sort of two flavors of chess algorithms. So the most powerful chess engine right now is called Stockfish. And Stockfish, basically, there's this evaluation function. So the kind of the central piece to all chess computers is this evaluation function, which says, given a position of the board, what is the evaluation? Is white winning? Is white close to winning? Is black winning? And if you go on a chess website, they'll sort of give you if you plug in a position to an analysis, like turn on the engine, if let's say I'm playing Hans, it'll be, plus 10 for me, right? And, the engine, the computer kind of has to learn how to map positions of the board to some number. And for a long, long time, I think Stockfish still relies on this a lot, is there's a human sort of created this evaluation function. So there's many factors that can lead to what constitutes a winning position. The most obvious one is material, right? So if white is up a queen, people understand that white is certainly winning, and a queen is worth like 10 points of material, while a pawn is worth 1. So if white is up a queen with nothing else going on in the position, white is plus 10. But there's other factors too, right? Like if there's a decisive mating attack, or the king is exposed, or the pawn structure is weak, or there's a knight on a really dangerous position, or all those different kinds of factors that can lead to a different evaluation score. And so a lot of experts have worked really, really hard at coming up with these really, really good evaluation metrics that can be used. And so once you have this evaluation function, the power of computers is that it can basically unroll the position many moves into the future, right? You can examine all of the different possible moves going forward. And while you can't check everything, because the state space, the space of possible moves in chess is so large, you can basically check a certain depth. Let's say I'm going to check the all possible next 5 moves in advance, and then put your evaluation function at the end and say, okay, which of these paths going forward gives me the best chance of winning? And that's using something called minimax or alpha beta and alpha beta pruning. So they can basically branch out and check things and say, okay, what's going to give me the best chance of winning going forward? And then we'll take that move. So that's sort of the most common variant. There's a second sort of newer variant, which is based on a computer program called AlphaZero, which instead of using these handcrafted evaluation functions that were made by humans, basically this program was learned to get really good at chess just by playing itself. So it plays itself a bunch of different times, and they use an algorithm called Monte Carlo tree search to basically learn, to use a neural network to map board positions to an evaluation function. So previously, humans that have domain expertise in chess would sort of come up with all these different features and say, okay, this is good for white, this is good for black, and then kind of morph that together into an evaluation function. And AlphaZero came along and said, actually, we don't need these hand-tuned features. What we're going to do is just have the algorithm play itself a bunch of different times, and the algorithm will start out basically making random moves. But after hundreds of thousands, even millions of iterations of self-play, it will sort of self-learn how to evaluate positions and decide what the next best move is. So it's pretty brilliant stuff, actually. It's the team led by David Silver at Google DeepMind that figured this stuff out.
Have the two AI computer bots played each other?
They have, actually, yeah. So there's famous many games. I actually don't know the stats, but AlphaZero actually beat Stockfish pretty handily, actually. This was a couple years ago. And since then, Stockfish has sort of adopted a neural network-based approach based on AlphaZero and has improved itself in some aspects. But yeah, it was a very famous match, and then you can check this up on YouTube. But there's a lot of really just spectacular, just stunning, beautiful positions that the classical computer engine just can't figure out, but AlphaZero was able to understand was actually better. And so there were tons of draws, tons and tons and tons of draws, because that's often how it goes in chess. But AlphaZero won handily, actually. And it was a pretty remarkable result that a computer on its own could learn to beat these sort of hand-tuned value functions that were created by humans. And chess computers continue to get stronger and stronger, based on the first, chess computer that beat Garry Kasparov in the 1980s. Or 90s, actually. I should know exactly when that was, but I don't. But they continue to get stronger and stronger and continue to be used heavily by the world's greatest chess players to help inform and teach themselves how to play and learn and understand positions better. It's really brilliant, actually.
Magnus Carlsen's mind is essentially just a computer playing this AlphaZero, improving itself.
In a funny way, kind of. I mean, these computers actually do behave similarly, right, to how we understand positions, right? Like, okay, if the knight is over here, that's a good piece because it's deep into opposition territory. And then if I move a couple moves in advance, right, then this position might look like this, and I think that looks good for me. And Magnus and the best players in the world have a really good intuitive sense of how these positions are good. But computers are just so much more powerful because they can search so much deeper. They can look so much farther ahead than a human being can and not make mistakes, right? Like Hans, like you know this, and you guys both know this. Like, how often is it, oh, I totally forgot that a piece was over there, right? Like, oh, I forgot that my queen was like attacked by this pawn, and then I move my bishop somewhere, and then someone just takes my queen, right? Like, chess computers they don't make mistakes like that. Magnus doesn't make mistakes like that either, but you know, you and I do.
You didn't have to say Hans first.
Yeah, but I do get that feeling. Do you ever practice with the bots? I noticed when I was playing chess.com after the match, it said, do you want to like look at your game again? And it will like tell me the moves where I made like really big mistakes.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's important to take what the bots, the computers say with a grain of salt, because everybody looks stupid in front of a computer. And, you know, it's hard sometimes. You can be really hard on yourself just by looking at what the computer found was the obvious move. But, you know, it's a computer. But I do it a lot, actually. You know, it's always really good for me to evaluate my games after, like, where did I blunder, right? Sometimes it's obvious to me where I blundered, if I hung a piece or I did something really stupid, like getting checkmated without paying attention. But oftentimes when the positions are more complicated, more subtle, it's really great to have an engine. And it's basically like a personal coach basically tell you, oh, this was a mistake. And now the chess.com engines have gotten so sophisticated that it will actually provide a little text description to you, you know, why that was a blunder. Like, oh, you had another move in this position that was better at developing a piece, right? And those things can be really, really great. It actually, in a way, I think democratizes the game in that now everyone has access to an expert in chess, right? That can show them where they went wrong, right? For decades and hundreds of years up until then, the only people who could have that were people who had a really, really strong coach. And the only people who had that were people who could afford it, right? And now I think the game will change that, and especially going forward. And we're already seeing this new generation of players who can take advantage of, who have sort of internalized a lot of the knowledge they have learned from computer engines. Well, some of the older players that exist now didn't have that experience growing up playing with computer engines and with chess engines and learning the lessons that they did from there. The last point I think I'll make about chess engines is that there's a lot of people out there who sort of say, oh, chess engines have ruined the game of chess. You know, that since we've had computer programs that beat the best human beings, chess is not interesting anymore. And that's just bunk, in my opinion. I think that's just a load of crap. I mean, chess has never been more popular, right? The chess computers have been around since the 80s and 90s, and yet the game has exploded in the past several years. I mean, it's the number of users, number of players on chess.com has ballooned. People are interested in the game more than ever, at the same time as our engines are getting better and better and could destroy Magnus 100-0. I think there's something, what makes, at least to me, chess so appealing is that it's something so like personal about it. It's just your brain, right? It's what can your brain do? And people are still going to be interested in trying to figure out what your brain is capable of and what your opponent's brain is capable of. And I think just introducing engines hasn't removed any of that from the game. It's only added. It's added the ability for people to self-improve in a way that didn't exist before.
So Ethan, the way I understand it, at least before Stockfish adapted, there was no like machine learning component to that, but AlphaZero did have that machine learning.
Yeah, exactly. So I think Stockfish now does have a machine learning component, but now, yeah, AlphaZero I think was really kind of the first demonstration that letting the computer learn how to evaluate the positions itself over just playing against itself in the long run is better. And I think that was really kind of the key breakthrough. There was no human domain knowledge input into the system to help it get better, right? There was no grandmaster sitting there trying to program the computer to think a certain way. And in a way that makes sense, right? In order to really achieve superhuman performance, you don't want to be limited by the humans that train your system, right? If you have a human expert telling the system how to behave, well, it's hard for that system to behave better than that human. It's more difficult than letting the machine figure it out by itself. I think that was kind of the key breakthrough, and that breakthrough I think applies across the board in machine learning. I think it's generally the case that not using human expertise in the long run actually results in better systems in a weird counterintuitive kind of way.
Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, is there a limit to these machines, or do you predict it'll just, if it's machine learning, will it just get better and better?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Maybe not one that's easy to answer. So
that's a tough question to answer, I think. I mean, I think from a purely computational standpoint, there's something called Moore's law, which basically says that the amount of compute per unit cost is roughly doubling every 9 years, roughly. And so the amount of compute alone is just growing rapidly. Like, look at companies like NVIDIA just making more and more and more powerful processors. It's amazing. And so just by computation alone, I think the algorithms will improve, but I will say it is diminishing returns. Like, you can see kind of the curve of the rating versus number of games of self-play. And it kind of looks, like a logarithmic function or a square root kind of function, where it's definitely a concave function, where as time goes on, you have to play, another million games to get just slightly better, right? Mm-hmm. Which is, by the way, is how humans behave too, right? Like, once you get getting from 500 to 800, all you have to do is just figure out not to blunder immediately, like just hang pieces, right?
Yeah.
And that you can do reasonably quickly. But to get from 2000 to 2500 is like, you have to develop a really deep understanding of positions, and that takes a lot more effort. So, I think the same is true for computers. And I think we're starting to run up against the ceiling, but chess is not a solved game by any means. And so I still think that there's still room to be, progress to be made here. Yeah.
That makes sense. Me and Paul were talking about earlier, the number of positions on a chessboard is astronomically high. Like, I think we said there's more positions on a chessboard than there are like atoms in the universe. So
yeah,
with that in mind, like if you talk about computational abilities, like obviously there's a limit there. So I think that's a really interesting point just to emphasize.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you can't build a computer larger than the number of atoms in the universe, right? And even then, you won't have covered all the possible chess positions. So it's yeah, I agree. The possibilities there is some finite limit, but I think we're not anywhere close to that yet. At least in terms of raw compute. But yeah, there's lots to explore in that space for sure.
Ethan, kind of bringing it back to how Hans and I can actually start playing. What do you recommend for like people who don't play a lot of chess, like maybe played like a couple games when they were in elementary school? Do you think that it's best, or does it even matter if they should like try playing chess.com, like try learning there, or if they should like go find like a local, like you were saying, like Charlottesville Chess Club to play with in their area if they just like wanted to start out again?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the person, of course. I'm somebody who gets a lot out of the social side. Chess is actually a very solitary game, but I think in a way the chess community is alive and well, and I get a lot of enjoyment out of getting to meet new people, playing people in person, and talking about positions with people in person. And I think that, at least that to me is the way that keeps me engaged the most. Like, just playing, like I kind of got into it again by playing with my little brother, and just the like desire to not get beaten by our little brother is a really strong motivating force. Even though, sadly to say, I think he's unfortunately, I hate to admit this, I can't believe I'm admitting this publicly, he's a stronger chess player than me, I think now, which is really tough to swallow because he used to be really bad and then he got really good. So
there's hope for me. That's what I'm hearing. There's hope for me.
there's definitely hope. There's definitely hope for you. I mean, yeah, there's definitely hope for you. Probably, I don't know how many games or assignments he skipped by because he was playing chess.com. So I don't know that my parents are super thrilled about how much chess he's been playing, but he's definitely gotten quite good. And so like having that as motivation, I think can really help because, playing online anonymously, you're not going to be as focused, right? Like you're going to be like, oh, like I don't really care. I'm playing this random person, and making dinner and checking over, or looking over the position, and make a move, just sending it just because. But kind of having somebody in person that you really have a desire to beat, I think is like the best way to get better. At least for me, it was. And so like when I go home and see my family and play against my brother, I'm always like really eager to play against him and see who got better in the time between since we last played. And sometimes we'll even play classical games, like just hours, 2 hour games. Well, I never have the patience to do that against somebody else, except for my brother, who I so desperately want to beat. So that's how I would say. That's what I would say is like, kind of find somebody who's comparable to you, who you really don't want to lose to, and have it be the same way. And kind of the two of you together will kind of, I think, like sound like you guys are similar rated, and pretty competitive people. I think that like just playing against each other, I think is a great way to do it. And then of course, engines can be useful, but I think it sort of lacks that sort of personal feel. Like to have a goal, like yes, like I destroyed Paul last week when we played. Like that's the best. I want to do that again. And Paul's like, losing sucks. I don't want to do that. And then you'll get better, and the two of you guys will kind of get better together.
Yes,
that's my advice.
How about Ethan? Like, obviously, the theme of this podcast, right, is getting into a new hobby or new passion every week. What's kind of the elevator pitch for why someone should care, why someone should get into chess?
That's a great question. I think there's a couple things that appeal to me about it. First of all, you can do it by yourself, right? It's a game you can play. There's always people who are looking to play. It doesn't take long to play. Like you can play a game that's 5 minutes long and just take a quick break. It's not like you can just go run out to the soccer field when you're on a lunch break. There's not that many activities or hobbies that you can just nowadays do from anywhere at any time, like regardless of with basically any variable amount of time constraint, right? If you want to play a bullet game in a minute, you only have a minute free. You can play a bullet game. I think that's one reason. The second thing is you can do it for as long as you possibly want, right? Like until you die, you can play chess. It's not like a sport, even though I love sports, I love playing sports. It's something I feel like I can always do. And I think maybe the last thing is, I guess the third thing is it's a great community. There's a lot of great community of chess players out there. It's a very positive, I would say, in general, community. There's lots of great people who are interested to play. It's a great way to meet people. And to me, I guess the last reason I would say is that I think it's a really satisfying game when you see yourself improving. I know chess, especially when you get started, can be frustrating. And I certainly get frustrated playing chess all the time. But to really look at your progression over time, it's like one of the few things where you can really objectively evaluate that you're getting smarter and better at a game. Objectively. Like it's just your mind. It's just you. It's something really pure about that. And as you play more and more and more, you can see yourself beating better and better and better players. And there's sort of a satisfaction you can get that you can get from that is hard to get in other sports like soccer. Like I could play on a great team and feel great about myself, and that's great. But I could have been playing with Lionel Messi, and that's why we were good. But the fact that it's so individual and it's not even physical, right? There's not even like a physical advantage. It's just what is your mental ability. It's super satisfying, I think, and enjoyable. That's my elevator pitch.
Yeah, I 100% agree, Ethan. There's something so rewarding about chess, especially like you see the progress, and especially if you go out and like learn something and then apply it in a game and it works. I would also, even though I suck at chess, I do love playing, so I want to echo that point also.
No, I mean, it doesn't matter the level. I think the level is irrelevant. I think the fact is, as you said, like there's principles and things to learn and apply at any level, right? And there's also no downsides, right? Maybe the only downside is someone calls you a loser, like Paul,
Yep.
Paul's like, oh, you're such a loser playing chess, going to the chess club on a Wednesday night, and they're like, oh, loser, nerd. I mean, yeah, maybe, but that's really the only downside I could I could possibly think of.
Ethan has both called you a loser, Hans, and me a bully.
Yeah, not everyone has a pulse. There might not be a downside for you if you get into chess.
Yeah, just basically pick better friends, and then you won't have any problems. Just kidding, Paul. You're the best.
Ethan, is there any kind of plugs you want to give here? Either could be personal or any kind of like content creators that you want to give a shout out to that you'd suggest someone check out.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this earlier, but I think Daniel Naroditsky has like been the single greatest contributor to my chess improvement. I think I definitely have a lot to attribute to his speed runs and his end game videos and a lot of his content. Yeah, so Naroditsky's great. I think Ben Feingold is just a crack up. Like he's just like the dad joke chess coach, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Just makes all kinds of ridiculous dad jokes that are kind of hilarious. I think those are the two big ones I would say for me, for sure.
Ethan, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I feel I'm going to go out, I'm going to learn, and I'll play you here again soon, and you can let me know how much better I've gotten. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, it sounds great. I want to watch you guys play a game. I want to see you guys.
Okay.
Okay, we'll do that now.
Yeah, I think we'll
All
play.
right.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Ethan.
Yeah, you got it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode on This Week I'm Into. Huge thank you to Ethan Blaser for sharing his passion on chess. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for the next episode, please reach out at thisweekiminto@gmail.com, and please give us a follow on Instagram at thisweekiminto. Also, please rate us 5 stars and share this episode with a friend. We're doing our best to grow the podcast, and your help really goes a long way. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the chess match of the decade. Tonight, we're witnessing a thrilling showdown between two players with impressive ELO ratings of 300, two formidable foes on the board, much like the superpowers of our time. Paul Imbroglio versus Hans Tyler.
That's right, Murray. This match is all the tension of the Bay of Pigs. Paul, normally known for his erratic style and frequent blunders, is playing like a man possessed, and Hans, the calm and collected master strategist, is matching him move for move.
Indeed, Ted. We all remember the infamous match of 58, where Paul's queen mysteriously disappeared from the board after only 5 moves. Some say it was an act of sabotage. Others claim Paul simply forgot where he put it.
Or maybe he thought his queen defected to the other side. But tonight, something's different. Have you noticed how Paul's been shifting in his chair? It's like he's sitting on a hotbed of coals.
Yes, Ted, perhaps it's the nerves, or maybe he's trying to send a secret signal to the pieces. Whatever it is, it seems to be working wonders. He's been playing with the precision we've never seen from him before, not a single blunder in the last 10 moves.
It's almost as if Paul's channeling his inner secret agent. Every move calculated, every piece in perfect alignment, and to think this is the same Paul who once mistook his bishop for a pawn.
Oh yeah, the great pawn predicament of 61. But tonight, Paul is focused. He's eyeing Hans like a hawk, looking for any signs of weakness.
And Hans, always the picture of composure, is starting to show signs of unease. He's glancing at the clock, rubbing his chin. He knows he's up against an opponent he's not faced before, and Paul, who seems to have traded in his blunders for brilliance.
Indeed. And look at this, folks. Paul's just maneuvered his knight into the perfect position, threatening Hans's bishop. What an excellent display of the Cuban missile opening.
Unbelievable. A move like that from Paul, it's like watching a sleeper agent spring into action.
And when he might, Ted. If he keeps this up, we could see an upset that would rival anything in recent chess history. Or Cold War history, for that matter. Hans is struggling to keep up. He's playing his own mind games, but Paul's not biting. He's too focused, too determined.
You know, Murray, if Paul keeps this up, he might just start a new trend in chess. The Paul maneuver. Playing like you don't know the rules even though he's been playing since first grade.
I'd like to see that catch on. But seriously, folks, stay tuned. This match is shaping up to be one for the history books. A true classic.
Absolutely, Murray. And remember, it's not over until the last piece falls.
Or until Paul runs out of patience. Either way, folks, don't go anywhere. The tensions are high, the stakes are higher, and who knows what surprises are still in store.
Stay with us as we continue this gripping broadcast of the Paul vs. Hans showdown, where every move is like a chessboard skirmish. This game has never looked so intense.